Hey Joel, how you doing today?
Doing great, Mike. Life
Good.
is good.
Life is good. Well, it's a little chilly where I'm at, but still beautiful.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a little anxious about what we're about to do.
Yes.
Like a little bit of anxiety going on here.
Well, that's good though.
Stress. Yeah, well, I usually find when I don't have it, I screw it up. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's good. Anyway, as we were talking before outside, we
Well,
wanted
just a
to
minute. Let's introduce. You are
interview
who?
each other.
You are who?
I'm Joel Wright. Born in Carmichael, California, just outside of Sacramento, born in '69, so I'm an older fart, I guess, and got into real estate in 2000, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and just really enjoyed it ever since. And now we're adventuring out, doing a podcast so that we can interview people and find out like what their stories are and their adventures in real estate. So, what about you,
Cool.
Mike? Where
And
you come
I'm
from?
Mike Gobbi, and I've been around for a long time. I'm a little bit older than Joel. And then started real estate in 1980, January 16th, 1980 was my first day in real estate and never looked back.
So,
So
so was that day memorable? That is the 16th.
very memorable.
Was it memorable, good or bad?
Good.
Good. Okay.
Big time good.
Big time good. Okay.
Yeah. I left a corporate job where you got no respect, and then just kept taking away all your bonuses and stuff. I was managing a large tire store for Uniroyal Corporation, and it was
Who-
just horrendous.
where were you born and raised?
I was born in Illinois,
Okay. What
but
city?
I was raised outside of Springfield.
Okay.
And I was raised military, so we traveled all over. We didn't live in one place longer than 3 years until I was in high school.
Okay.
So Japan, Illinois, Mississippi, Minnesota, Biloxi, um, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and
Just
you've got family in the Great White North, right?
yes, yeah. My roots are from Wisconsin, Milwaukee area.
Okay.
So
But then ended up in Sacramento.
right, and then my dad retired, and we moved to Sacramento. And then he landed a job at McClellan Air Force Base as a second career. So he retired out of the Air Force at, believe it or not, 38 years old. And that was his 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he put another 20 years in civil service out at McClellan. So he is what they call a double dipper.
So
He's
he
since,
did.
yeah. So he's
Okay,
since
so
got,
how did you get from a dad who went to two full-time careers working for somebody else to like none of that?
I have no idea. It's just, he took a career through the service in the military.
Yeah.
And when I got out of high school, I had no clue what I was going to do. So just everything just kind of just fell into place. I had no plans, no idea. Just moved into sales, moved into all kinds of things, and a few doors opened up, and I took advantage and stepped through. Um, didn't finish college because I was working, and then got married, had kids, did the whole 9 yards, and then did the tire store, tire company. I was managing the store before I was even 21. So, and expanded through there and then did 10 years there. And then it was just horrendous. Maybe I'm not corporate material. I'm a renegade, if you want to look at that. And because I was always working ways to figure out to circumvent the policies
Right.
to take advantage of the store that I was in. So they were
Okay, so
the
why'd you have to circumvent the policy? Was the policy just
well
not
because
like what needed to
because
be
I couldn't.
done?
It was difficult to maneuver and get things done for your store. Um,
So you
and
you were
so
more results oriented then, is what you're saying.
results oriented, and I understand the system and worked it really hard and was actually quite good at it. So, that's what I had to do to take care of the look, and it was the number one
Yeah,
retail store in the
You're,
United
you're
States,
saying
so
that you were really good at going around the system. Is that what you're
going
saying?
around the system and getting
Okay.
things done that needed to be done
Yeah, that
on
weren't the
location.
usual way of doing them. Is that what
Correct,
you're saying? Okay.
correct. I mean, they had policies and I appreciated the policies, but it wasn't fast enough, so I figured out how to, I kind of figured a few things out. And, well, like I said, the store was the number one retail store in all of the United States. So
Okay.
when you get that kind of clout, you can get things done.
Yeah, was it the number one retail store before you started or?
No,
Okay.
no, we brought it up to the number one.
All right.
And I figured out a few things of how to do that. And then the general manager, we just worked and figured out ways to make it happen. So
Okay. So what was like your number one takeaway from that you learned that like helped you the rest of your life? I mean, there could be more of
um,
them, but
well, the main thing is how do you figure out to be independent, still get things done, and comply to rules and regulations? The more rules and regulations that you have, the more restrictions that you have, and it tends to hold you back. And that's what corporate does. Well, when you cross over to real estate, you are basically self-employed, and then you have to figure out that system. And now we have legalities that we have to deal with it when you're in real estate, because you can lose your license, you could be sued. That's different than corporate.
right. Yeah, that's not stuff you're trying to circumvent. That's stuff you're trying to
No,
work around.
work
I
around,
mean, you work within the
comply
parameters of
with.
the
Yeah,
legal
yeah,
parameters.
it's complying
Yeah.
and knowing systems. Well, I had a partner and she just kept us all legal. We did everything. So in my total career, we've never had any lawsuits or anything like that. It was
Yeah. Knock on wood, right?
knock on wood. Yeah, we've had small claims courts, but they were frivolous. And you go down there and you say, Judge, I don't know why I'm here. And then the judge says, yeah, I don't know why you're here, dismissed. Those kind of things.
Well, that's a good feeling.
It's a good feeling, yeah. So you can go to those kind of situations, not stressed because you know you're right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to be.
Okay, so back to January 16th. So you came from, you said Uniroyal Corporation, you had number one store. Why'd you leave? Like what was better than that if January 16th was a good day?
Well, I wasn't happy.
Okay.
Um, and that made it unbearable for the rest of the family. So if one of the spouses or one of the family members is not happy, it trickles through. So January 15th was my last day with the corporation. January 16th was my first day into real estate. So I stepped into real estate about 30 days before I left Uniroyal Corporation. And so I was learning my way, getting my license and doing things. So I stepped into a investment group, and they were investing and buying properties for their limited partnerships. And they needed a property manager, somebody to manage all the real estate that they owned. So I managed a retail store. So I went from managing people in a store to managing houses and apartments and stuff and tenants. So my philosophy was managing is managing. If you have good managing techniques, you should be able to handle it. The concept's pretty much the same in my view. You're just managing a different product, something different.
Right.
So within maybe 6 months of doing that, I got bored because I dialed everything in. Everything was running like clockwork,
You're talking about managing tenants, is what you're
managing
saying.
all the real estate.
Okay.
So I got bored. So I went to the owners and I said, what are you guys doing? I want to do something different. I want to learn that. I got the management under control. That's all handled.
Yeah, no, sorry, back up a little bit. You said you got your license before you started on
I
in
started
January.
on my license before when I didn't get my license until after I was already like 2 months into
Oh,
working.
okay. Yeah, but you were doing the job, you just, and as non-licensed and then
Yes,
got your
yeah,
license and, okay.
got my license and made everything legal. So, so then, um, I went to the owners and I said, what are you guys doing? And he said, well, we're buying foreclosures at the courthouse steps. And this is how we're researching them and this is what we're doing. And I said, really? I said, I want to learn how to do that. So I came up with my own system. And in those days, you had a newspaper because we didn't have computers. So it was in a newspaper publication that was called the Daily Recorder.
Yeah, I
So I had
remember.
my little razor blade. I had 4x5 cards. So I would cut out everything and then put it on the card and I'd make notes and then I would call the banks and the lending institutions to see if they would be open to discounting and lowering their opening bid so we would be a bidder at the courthouse steps. So went through that whole process. So we were buying houses at the courthouse steps through the owners and then owning the properties and putting them into limited partnerships, and then I would take over the management. Well, one day I called a company and I think it was called Union Home Loans. And Linda was the gal's name, and she answered the phone. And I said, yeah, I explained who I was and what we're doing. And I said, you know, if your opening bid is at this amount, we would be a bidder and you wouldn't have to deal with the house. And she said, well, I can't do that on this property. This one has to go at that number. And it has to go through the foreclosure. And I said, okay, fine. I said, so what are you going to do with it when you get it back? There was a pause and she said, well, I don't know. Would you want to list it for us and get rid of it? And I go, absolutely. So that was the like in January, February of 1981, or actually it was the latter part of 1980. And that right there threw me into the REO business.
Okay.
So that's how I got started with the REO, was working with all these, and they had no idea what to do with the bank-owned properties. REO never was at the volume in the 80s before. So that's when all the departments were developed. That's when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, Bank of America, all the different lending institutions actually went and set up divisions to handle all that. The
So
procedure
back, what you're saying is back in the seventies,
in
what did the banks do for REOs?
what they
When
did
they
is
took,
the branch managers handled the REO individually because they only had like 4 or 5 or 6 or even 10, and they could handle that volume in the branch. But once the volume got to be so big, the branches could not handle the volume. And that's what happened in the 80s. There was a large volume. So then that's when the departments, the REO departments, well, little history here. Bank of America had a huge volume, so they called them OREO, which is our real estate owned, was by the definition. So we used to call them Oreos.
yeah.
So over time,
Was that back before Oreos?
yeah, well, that was in the 80s. So we called them Oreos.
I
Our
don't know when
real estate
Oreos
owned.
came around, but
Yeah. So then eventually they dropped the O and it became REO, real estate owned.
so are you intimating that maybe Bank of America was the first one to call it REOs,
Well, it seems like Bank of America was always the
or
leader.
they just led the way?
They just led the way because they
Yeah.
had to deal with things. Um,
Okay.
if you remember all the lawsuits that went on, it was B of A versus this, B of A versus that.
Are you talking about after 2008? Because I remember a lot of
No,
those.
no, in the 80s they
Oh,
had,
really?
oh
I
yeah,
don't remember that. I was too young.
yeah, in the 80s, you could assume any kind of loan subject to without
Oh,
qualifying.
right, right, right.
And so there was a lawsuit that Wellenkamp versus B of A, and B of A lost it. So that meant that anybody could come in and assume any loan under any circumstances. So we used to do what we call the mirror test. So if you can put a mirror underneath your nose and you can fog it, you can buy a house.
Really? You
Yeah.
could assume the
Assume
loan.
anything. There
You could
was
just come
not.
in and say, hey, B of A, Wells Fargo,
You
you got this property. I want to assume the loan. They just
But you
shrug
can
their
go, yeah,
shoulders.
but you can go to the seller who owns it.
Yeah.
And if they were in trouble,
Oh,
you can just basically buy their house,
okay. So you wouldn't even,
take over
this
the
pre
loan and,
pre REO before it goes
yeah,
REO.
right. And
Oh,
the banks or the lending institutions could not call the loan, even though there was a due on sale clause.
well,
Because the law said B of A versus Wellingham, you can't,
that they
you
couldn't
can't,
come foreclose even though they're,
nope. So you can assume anything. And then later on in the mid-80s, then the
I think they
Garn Bill came
tightened up
along.
their mortgage paperwork since then.
Right. Well, the Garn Bill came, and which then reversed the decision. And
Okay.
that, I think that happened in 86, if I'm not mistaken. So they reversed the assumption, and you couldn't assume without qualifying.
Right. Okay.
So that was called the Garn Bill.
All right.
So that's a little bit of history of how that all came about. And I was right in the middle of that. And in the early 80s, the interest rates were, as we can remember, it was like 17 to 18%.
Yeah.
So the company that I worked with, we did purchase money notes and in the lending. So one of my jobs in the early 80s was to go around to all the real estate offices and teach them how to write their contracts. So we would buy the notes right there out of escrow so they can close their transactions.
Now,
So
these were origination notes or are they second
yeah,
notes
at
or
the
what
time
were
of the
they?
sale, it was seller carryback.
Okay.
So they created a note and the seller would carry back the note, but the seller didn't want to own the note. So we would
You
come in
you then
and
buy it at a discount from the seller.
from the seller out of escrow. So we would fund the second or the third note. And then we would own the note and put the money in escrow. And then the seller would get all their money. So if it was like a $10,000 second loan in there, because somebody was coming in and assuming the first loan, because you could assume anything without qualifying,
Right.
but there was a little bit of equity there. How
Yeah.
do they make that work? Well, we bought the equity. So the buyer would come in, put their 10, 20% down, then we'd make up the difference to the first loan, and then we'd buy the note at a discount. So if it was a $10,000 note and they wrote it at 12%, our yield was like 18 to 22%. So the note was discounted over the
Right,
6
but what
months.
you're saying it, I'm not sure I understand, so I need to clarify. It's a $10,000 note. It's at 12%, but you're not buying the note at $10,000. You're buying the note at $7,000
Yes,
from the original seller.
right, to
Now,
get a yield.
yeah, to get a yield, to get a higher yield, 18% or whatever.
Yeah,
You know, yeah, whatever you buy the note, whatever money you have
right,
into the note,
right.
will give you what your yield is. But so how does that relate to second or thirds? I'm not understanding how the transaction went
Well,
together.
because you had a first loan with, say, Wells Fargo or B of A or a lending institution, so you
Yeah,
come and assume the first loan. So let's say the loan is, well, in those days, houses were a lot cheaper. So let's say the first loan was 25,000.
yeah,
But you're buying the house for 40,000 or
right,
45,000, right? Well, the buyer's coming in and putting $5,000 or 10 grand down. Well, you have a gap between the first loan and the down payment. Well, we filled that gap with a second.
okay,
And then the second was created, and then the real estate agent would get the quote from us, and then they would structure the contract. So then what's important to a seller is the net proceeds at the close of escrow, correct?
right, right,
So that now the listing agent can now, or even the buying agent can now net it out and say, hey, seller, you're going to net this amount of money at the close of escrow. Are you
okay.
okay with it? Well, it made sense, and inventory was crazy. The market
But
was,
wait, we got to go back over it because I'm not sure I still understand it. So let's use what you were saying in your numbers, $45,000 sale, $25,000 first note.
No,
which
$50,000 sale, or yeah, $45,000 sale, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter any number. $45,000 sale, but a $25,000 note, so you have $20,000 difference in there. I'm sorry, $25,000 first, which is a note that's already on the property. The property is going to sell for $45,000, so you have a $20,000 difference spread.
Right,
But the
and
buyer,
then the buyer would put 10,000 down, let's say.
okay, so the buyer puts 10,000, so that takes it from 45 to 35. You
So
still
now
have
you have
$10,000
now you have a
difference.
$10,000 gap.
Yeah.
So you create a second at
Yeah, so
whatever.
that's what that's what the company you're
That's-
working for would do, is create that second and then discount the second to the seller. So the agent goes to the seller and says, hey, you're gonna pass this $25,000 loan on to the buyer. You're gonna pass
The $10,000
the
second,
$10,000 second, but the bank is gonna buy it from you. Oh, that's really cool. That is the lending institution, your company
our
is
company,
gonna
we're a
buy,
private entity,
right, you're gonna buy that $10,000 note for $7,000.
correct,
You're gonna pay him 7, but it's gonna be a note of 10,
correct,
and the buyer is then gonna have that second note, and they're gonna pay $10,000 in cash. So the seller gets all their closing costs paid off, plus the rest of the $10,000 from the cash from the buyer, and they get $7,000 from you, your company, or the
Yes.
company you work for.
yes,
And you get a note that is higher, has a much higher yield, because the seller discounted the note as part of the original agreement.
right. And,
Oh, that's so cool.
and how it worked out even better was, in those days, if you went and just got a brand new loan, the interest was 17%, but they
Right,
were
right.
assuming a 12% first.
Right,
So then we created an 18 or 22% second. So when you blend them together, they were maybe at 14 or 15. It's still 2 to 3 to 4 points cheaper than the going rate for a brand new loan at that time.
right. But you would make that second loan, you would make it to the buyer at 12%. They're assuming at 12%, so the buyer overall has a 12% loan rather than getting a new mortgage at 18%.
Right.
But your yield, what you're saying is that your yield to the
Investor that bought the
investor,
note.
the note holders, it is higher than that 12%.
Correct. Correct. And we would do those loans for anywhere from 1 year to 3 years.
Right.
And then the company I worked with also was a pension plan company. So they would take that note and sell it to the pension plans, and the pension plan would fund it. And then we were the ones that managed it and processed everything.
Right, you managed the note, I forgot, note management.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're basically servicing the loan.
We serviced the
that's what it is.
loan. And then if they defaulted, we handled all the foreclosures if that needed to be. But we did good notes, and they paid. And then over time, they would either have to refinance the house, or we would extend the note for an added fee.
Right, so you could extend it from 3 years to 3 more years or whatever.
Yeah, and then we would pay off the investor and then rewrite the note, and then either sell it to another investor, or the original investor pension plan can either continue with the note if they choose to. Many of them did, because it was all about the income and the cash flow to the pension.
Right. Okay, so when did all that go away? Like, when did your job description in real estate shift?
That was probably in '85. The company broke up.
Now, is that just because the rates went down from 17 down
No,
to
it had to
12?
do with partners breaking up and a few other things that created a problem. So
They
then
didn't love each other anymore?
they didn't love each other. So that part, and then I went with the company that survived, and then that company, because they had the owner of that company had the pension company. So then he started.
So they had the servicing company?
Right.
Because the pension plans were like
That's a whole different, it's like a
CalPERS or
separate
whatever.
entity. It's a separate company.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the company I worked with was the company that managed and serviced the notes.
Okay.
Okay. And then they became another style of an investing company. So then they started buying apartment complexes. They did, for example, they bought the Swiss Colony Winery in Clovis and then converted it, did a bunch of things. They owned a recording studio in Reno. They own apartment complexes up in Oregon Bend, Oregon.
Okay.
They owned land, and when you go out to El Dorado Hills, this was like in the 80s, and you look at well, out Folsom, and where they're building all those new houses and stuff. Well, that one ridge right there, the company I worked with owned that ridge because of the water rights, and I mean,
I drove past it yesterday and was amazed how much new
yeah,
construction over the
yeah,
last 10 years has gone up
yeah.
there.
Yeah, it was all talked about in the early 80s, and I was kind of like in the middle of hearing all this stuff.
Okay, so I want to throw in there because I've heard people who it's like, oh, hold the land in the path of development and you're going to make millions of dollars. And um, I think that's a great example. It's like, great, if you bought it in the 80s, but you didn't make any money until 30 years later.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was brutal if you were trying to hold something that long.
Yeah,
It was brutal, but the idea was that land held 200 water permits, for building out there.
yeah,
So if they bought the land, they could sell off a portion of them, which would cover a percentage of the land. And because there was a lot of building going on, and in those days, still to this day, you got to get the water permits for the meter
right.
permits.
You're talking about individual house permit, like each house
Right.
that's built has to have a water permit for their house. Is that what you're
To get
saying?
a water meter, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. To get a
So
water meter so they can build a house.
right. So that they had that all going on. So they
Well, there's
sold
a lot more
off.
buildings than that now. Well,
Oh gosh, yes. Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's like buying a bar and having a liquor license.
well,
Because
were
you
they
gotta have a
selling
liquor
the water?
license to do
Were
that.
were they selling the permits
Yeah, they sold off a certain amount of permits. So then
with the
the other
land that they
builders, yeah,
sold?
so the other builders can go and buy them and apply those to their properties and keep building.
Oh, okay. So they didn't have to apply for more permits from the county to be able
Right,
to do it. They already had so many that were already given from
right.
the county.
You
Oh,
can move
interesting.
it from this property to that property.
Right, right.
So that was one of the things that they did. Um,
So is
but
that, I assume that was a value added. They made more money by helping to sell those.
right, it's like buying a big piece of land and then going and lumbering it
Hmm.
and pulling the lumber out
Right,
because now you have value in the lumber. Well,
right,
the
right, right.
value of this property was the water permits and the
Huh,
water.
okay.
So those kind of
I don't
things.
understand it, but I understand that you could make money that way. I just don't
Yeah,
understand how
yeah.
that works, but that's
Those are
okay.
the kind of things that I was able to watch and review and pay attention to. And then Kathy, my
Right.
wife, was in the
Yep.
middle of that because she was the corporate secretary for that division. And so that's where um, we had a lot of experience in doing that.
So when did you get into selling houses? Like garden
Um,
variety, mom and pop homes?
that's a real good question because I started doing the REO and listing those properties.
Yeah.
And then once you do an REO and you have listings, then other people contact you and then you just kind of work your way into the normal mom and pop everyday sales. And then, I went to high school.
Okay, so quick question. Was it you sold these properties and then people would buy and then you'd know people and you'd get to know kind of some of these buyers and some other sellers and then people say, hey Mike, I want you to sell my property over here.
Mhm.
And were you buying at the courthouse steps? What was going on?
Well, we were buying a courthouse steps too, and then an individual, because I went to high school in the Sacramento area, so I knew a
Yeah.
lot of people.
Yeah.
So they understood that I was involved in real estate and doing investments and stuff. And the next thing you know, they're just calling you to put their houses on the market, because when you're working with a specific style of real estate,
Yeah.
you tend to levitate to a higher level, especially when you're working with investments and complicated transactions. So for me, it was a natural thing. And then, like we sold hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses in my career, combination REO and private.
Yeah.
And then we did a lot of investment purchasing too. So
Yeah,
we're
you
buying properties for investors as individuals.
yeah, you had some good years in 08 and 09.
Those were good years in 08 and 09, but we had good years in the 1980s where everybody else was suffering and dying. I
Yeah.
was busier than a son of a gun.
Yeah, how'd the 90s turn out for you? Like 90 to 96, 97,
I
were there a
was
lot of
I
REOs?
was swamped. I was doing REO then too,
Yeah.
and everybody was dying on the vine, but I was just, well, the 90s was a real interesting cycle because we created a group, and we created an REO group, and we were the number one REO people in the region, in the Sacramento region.
Now, when you say you created the group, is that like 5 people
There
that
was
got
four of us,
together?
four,
Four, okay.
four of us. And the name of the group was Gobbi Price Maker.
Okay.
So it was just all of our last names. And so then we created a list, an REO list. So they had a bunch of properties, I had a bunch of properties, and we talked and we decided, you know what, let's merge together and become a powerhouse. So we merged together, and just by merging my 20-something listings and they had like 15, all of a sudden we were like 30, 40 listings
Right.
in one bundle.
Yeah, one location.
Yeah, so then what we did is we created a list of
Mhm.
all the properties and put them on a big legal size paper, two-sided sometimes.
Yeah.
And then we take them to the local boards and pass them out.
Right. And this is when area books were in vogue. See, I came in 2000 and we had just started using the computer. I mean, I don't know when, but I started on DOS programs for the MLS. And so, it'd take a few minutes to get on and it wasn't very fast. And the pictures
You
took
had
a
to take
while to
the phone
download.
and put the phone that's when I started. That was in the 90s or 80s.
Right, right. Well, yeah, but I was never in the area book where you'd have a printout of, well, and it wasn't even, I mean, what was it? A copy? I mean, what would they have back then in the 80s and the 90s? If you had your area book, they just write the name in the book, or what was it?
I'm not understanding. So we had the MLS books. There
Yeah,
were books.
right. But I forget, like, I remember, when you printed on those rolls of paper.
Yes, and then if you
And
left it in sunlight, it would disappear.
right, right.
NCR paper or whatever they called it at the time.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't even know how all the different offices, like you'd have the Coldwell Bankers and the Remax and all these different companies, Century 21s, and each one would have a book in their office with all of the listings at the time. So you'd go in, you flip through the book. I mean,
Well, it was more of a
that how it
binder.
was?
It was a binder that they kept at the floor
Okay.
desk.
Right. So
So,
you sell a property, you pull the listing out,
right,
and
yeah, and then for the MLS, they had the MLS book.
okay.
So, and then you had the comp book. So you had all the solds in a book. So over time, we had to keep all these books. I mean, I had shelves and shelves and shelves. And if you needed to do research, you had to go back to the MLS books and
Right.
thumb through, and everything was categorized by zip code and location. And then you could look at the pricing and you can do some comps, but it was manually done, not
Yeah.
computerized done. And that's what we did all through the 80s.
So then what you were saying is you put 20, 30, 40 houses on one sheet of paper.
Yeah, we took a legal piece of paper and it was our list of inventory that we controlled and we managed.
Okay,
And we had the listings for.
right.
So then we would pass them out, and in those days, they had companies that would take your flyers. If you had an open house or a listing, there was companies that come and get the flyers, and then they'd pass them out to all the real estate offices and put them in the mailboxes for all the realtors.
Okay,
And then we would give that list of properties to them, and then they would deliver them to all the real estate offices. Plus, we would have them at all the board meetings, the
right.
MLS meetings. So we would have them there. So,
How often did you have to update that?
oh my goodness. We probably tried to do it at least once a week
Okay.
because they were constantly shifting,
Yeah,
selling.
constantly selling, pending, whatever.
Yes, pendings and stuff. So the office that we were in, they shoved us because we were so active, we were very disruptive in the office.
Now, what does that mean? Does that mean balloons and confetti or
Well,
like,
we would
what's
do
disruptive?
a lot of activity, a lot of talking, a lot of agents coming in to see what was going on. So we had an office that had a back door. So they put us in this back room, a
Mhm.
big open room. And so what we did is we got grease boards and we put 6 of them up on the wall, bolted them to the wall.
Okay,
So then we get up on the desk. I don't know if you remember the old style stock market in the 18, or, in the 30s and the 40s. They would go into the stock market room and they would have all the stuff written on the grease boards and
yeah,
stuff. That's what we looked like.
okay,
So and agents would come in the back door and we'd always have a sign, don't talk to us, don't ask us any questions. So on that grease board, those were things that were coming
okay.
and things that either sold.
And that's the equivalent of a modern day whiteboard, right?
Right. Modern day whiteboard.
Okay.
So they would come in, stand in there and look up on the board and write down the new properties that we got before they went on the list.
Mhm.
So then they could run out and look at it and see if they would buy them. So there was, people buying them and flipping them or fixing them, and then homeowners living in them and stuff like that. So agents would
Right.
come in and do that.
But REOs were known to be a deal, right? That is, the bank was typically going to sell them lower than the consumer would.
Well, they would sell them lower than what the debt was.
But what I'm saying
And
is,
then the
if
bank
you looked at
wanted,
whatever that number was, it was typically lower than what the consumer's price was.
yes, that was the perception.
Yeah. I mean, I saw the same thing in 2008, 2007, 8, when everything fell apart. The consumers are still trying, the owners of a home, trying to get as much as possible for their home. And so they didn't fall as low as the banks because the banks were all competing against each other with the short sales and the REOs. And it was a catastrophe for the sellers
Right,
because they couldn't, they they couldn't lose as much money as the banks could.
right, correct. So in the 80s, the REO was brand new. Nobody knew what to do. The banks we went through a huge learning curve, setting the departments up, coming up with systems and everything. Then when the 90s hit, they already knew how to do REO departments. They knew how to gear up, they knew the system, they knew what to do. The new thing was, in those days, that was the short sales. So they came out with the short sale in the 90s, and that was just crazy messy. How do you do it? What do you do? I mean, I remember negotiating a short sale and it took me 18 months to finish it up. But that's what was happening in the 90s. That was new. So we had to come up with systems and figuring that out. So then when we rolled into the 2000s, they already figured out how to do the REO departments and set that up. They already figured out how to do the short sales and how to process them because they made a lot of mistakes and learning curve, right? The new
Yeah.
thing for 2000s was loan modifications. And
Okay.
that was a crazy mess too.
Oh, that was
It
fun.
was,
Yeah.
it was just crazy.
You
They
know,
didn't know what to do, how
side
to
note
do
on that,
it.
I didn't see anything until 2012 when 49 or 48 of the attorney generals for the states sued the five biggest banks. And that came through in like January or February. $5 billion, I think, was the settlement on that.
Mhm.
And prior to that, there were a ton of foreclosures, a ton of short sales. I remember knocking doors in the summer of 2012 and just going, okay, what happened? Where are the short sales? Where are the foreclosures? Like, what happened here? Because it was like a ghost town. And so I knocked doors for half a day, probably 3 hours, and I don't know, talked to 20 people maybe, but like 19 of those 20 people had a workout.
Yes.
Like I was like, okay, this is different. The banks are now starting to work. But in my opinion, it took that lawsuit and whatever federal judge signed off on it, and it took the biggest banks losing $5 billion over a variety of ways. It wasn't just like cash out the payments, but that that caused the banks to actually think, okay, we're going to work this out. And a side note on that, I actually had a real estate broker who was retired, had an investment property, a duplex. They, talking about the banks not wanting to do workouts, they um, anyway, I think I already mentioned it was a Wells Fargo bank. They would not do it. They sent them however many times, like 10 times, all their paperwork every time. It wasn't accepted. They finally went to a Wells Fargo branch and sent it to Wells Fargo and said, with the receipt of sending, faxing it in, from Wells Fargo branch, and they still said they didn't receive it. And I'm pretty sure that B of A was sued for actually just taking it off the fax and throwing it in the garbage. I think that was a
Mhm.
suit that went through.
Ah,
I can't
So,
imagine how big their garbage cans were full of paper.
right. So when you were knocking on the doors asking, and they said, we're doing a workout,
Yeah,
those workouts were not completed yet. They were doing a workout and
yeah.
they weren't willing to
No,
move.
some of them were actually completed and they were done within weeks.
It depends on the lender.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't
And there
know.
were tons of them that were not completed on a timely manner, but you go talk to them and say, hey, are you interested in selling your house? No, because they're doing a workout. But see, they
Right,
didn't have to make payments either.
right.
So they were living there for
Well,
free.
they already hadn't made payments. That's why they were getting foreclosed on. That's why they were
Exactly.
notice of default trustee sale.
So a
And
year later, I'm now knocking on the door. When do you plan on moving? Because it just went to sale.
well, yeah, a lot of
So
those
many
just
of them
never went. They did a
didn't work
workout,
out.
did
Yeah,
put the money on the back end,
yeah.
and
And then the lawsuits started happening from there again.
I don't remember that.
Because they drug it out and it went to foreclosure and they never approved the loan mod and oh my goodness, it was a fiasco.
I had one client that we were like 2 days from closing, and they foreclosed on it. We had a buyer
What's the
for
address? Maybe I had it. No, I just
you didn't have it. You didn't have it. And anyway, it was really interesting. That was a woman, I believe. I remember she liked animals. I don't think I was ever in the property, but I want to say she had like 15 cats or something like that, and however many dogs. Anyway, it was really interesting. We found a buyer for it. I was representing her as a seller. We, tried to work with the bank the whole time. Oh yeah, we'll postpone. Yeah, we'll postpone. I mean, they weren't disingenuous, but they're like, yeah, we've got to pass it up to whoever, and then we're working on the postponement and whatever, and then they finally just foreclosed on it because we couldn't get the purchase money in before the sale happened, and so the whole thing collapsed. Anyway, that was interesting.
yeah.
So sorry. Okay.
That
What
was
else
awesome.
should we know about your real estate adventures?
Well, also in the 80s, I owned a real estate company once we broke away from the investment company. So I went independent. So we started our own real estate company and property management.
Okay, did you start from scratch? Like,
Yeah, we just opened up a company and started from scratch. Because I had all the REO business.
yeah.
And I thought, I'm not going to join a major
Now,
company.
did you do it with Gobbi Price Maker or was this
No,
before?
no, we broke up. That whole thing dissolved.
Okay,
And then I still had the largest portion of the REO business at the time.
right,
So we all went our separate ways. And
okay.
then I went,
You just
well, this
stopped
was
on
in the
that one,
eight,
you
this
just
was,
stopped
yeah,
working.
this was in the 80s. So this is
Right, okay.
way before Gobbi Price Maker.
Right, okay.
So the investment company dissolved. And then I went out on my own because I still had REO and regular business, normal
For
sellers
sales, yeah,
and buyers and stuff. So I was doing that. And then so we started a real estate company, but at the same time, when the investment company folded up, they had a whole lot of properties. So the owners of those properties through the limited partnerships needed a management company. So we started a
right.
management company and then managed a bunch of real estate. So we had
How many units did you
140.
start out with?
We were around 140.
Okay, yeah, so you, day one, you had management, you had stuff to manage, you didn't have to go hunt down stuff. You didn't
No,
have to create all the wheels and then go find the clients at the same
no,
time.
no.
You already had the clients, you just had to create the
We
wheels.
already had the clients, so we just needed the entity.
Oh, yeah, cause you're already managing them, right?
Yeah, I was already managing them, so we created the entity, um, continued managing, and then picked up a whole bunch of other management properties to boot on top of that. But then we also did the normal real estate, and we had REO going. We just had a lot of different things going on, and then I remember,
Okay, so why'd you get out of that?
well,
Cause
I was just coming to that. So what happened was,
it's
managing real
like, oh, you
estate,
already have the clients, you already
yeah,
have the,
managing real estate for investors and stuff and owning a management company is brutal. It's a time consuming financial, it was just crazy. So I remember one day in December of 1989, Kathy came to me in the morning.
yeah,
Kathy was my wife.
yeah.
And she said, Mike, you're fired and I quit.
Now wait, who is the chief operating officer, or chief,
Well,
the
whoever the
CEO?
boss is, and I never was the boss. So, it was just really, really crazy times.
Right,
And so we decided to dissolve and close out our real estate company. So I gave away all the property management to other managers that I've known very well. So I kind of divvied them out to the style of management that the other companies handled.
right.
So we got rid of all the management.
No, wait a minute. I want to throw in on that because I think that's important. I've noticed that different, and tell me if you think that I'm correct or not. Um, correct your opinion of my opinion. My opinion is that property managers manage differently, and
Yes,
if you want to look at it as like A, B, C, and D property,
yes,
and there's some that are really good at Class A property, and there's some that are really good at Class D
yes,
property, and B and C as well, etc. But nobody I've met manages A, B, C, and D well. Like they
correct,
either manage, and so if you get a property manager, you give them a Class A property, but they're used to managing C and D properties, they're going to screw it up. Like it's not going to work well. They're going to stick the
right,
wrong kind of tenant in there or whatever. And by the same token, if you give an A, B manager a C or D property, they're going to screw it up as well. Not because they're bad managers, they're just bad managers at that property class type.
correct. So what I did is we looked, and I had two management companies, and we gave it away. We didn't sell the management. We just
Yeah.
gave it away because that's how badly we wanted to get out of it. So
Like, please take this from me.
yeah, so that was my last time in owning a management company. We just didn't want to do it.
And that was 89, you say?
Yeah, 1989.
Okay.
And so
That was a good
we
time
had
for
one
you
man.
because Then the
Yeah.
REOs kicked off in the nineties, like
Yes,
90,
at
91.
91. So the latter part, well, actually the middle part of 90 is when it kind of started. But anyways, I'll explain that in a bit. So then I had a management company that really only wanted certain quality properties. So it was the better quality properties. So we went through the inventory and gave them all those properties that they said they would manage. They didn't want to go over the American River, so they were mostly northern Sacramento. And then I had another management company that would do just about anything. And he had a bunch of stuff that was Del Paso Heights, North Highlands, you know,
The older, more
the
distressed.
older, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ghetto-y type stuff. So then we took all that inventory and then they gave it to him, and he was happy as can be, and he knew how to deal with it, and it worked out just perfect.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's just
then,
that there's
and then
different
in 19
management styles for different types of tenants and different types of properties.
correct, we figured that out.
Yeah,
So
not
then,
good or bad or ugly, it's just different.
right, and then 1990 came, January, New Year's.
Yeah.
That first week of 1990, we had the big freeze in Sacramento. And
Okay.
a bunch of pipes froze
Yeah, I
and
was gonna say, so pipes broke, okay.
yeah, and the commercial buildings, water leaked all over and it was crazy. So I called those property management companies to see how they were affected. And they said, oh my goodness, we got this property and that property and it flooded and this happened. And I go, I didn't have to deal with any of that. I dodged that bullet.
And this is what, like a 1 month or 3
That
weeks
was like the
after you gave
second
them the
week or the
properties.
first week of January of 1990,
Yeah.
something like that. And I go, holy moly, that is,
So it was less than a month after
oh
you
yeah,
liquidated your management portfolio.
yeah, and closed the corporation and, but then we went over to a traditional office.
Okay.
And so I
Who'd
worked,
you go to first?
it was TRI.
Okay. No,
And they,
TRI, as I know them as commercial, not residential.
yeah, they own commercial and a residential division. So
Okay.
I went to TRI
Now, did they
residential.
used to have a residential division?
Yeah.
Because when I knew them in the early 2000s, it was only
Yeah, they
commercial.
were only commercial, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was in 1990, we went to a traditional office with TRI, and that was downtown on P Street.
Okay.
And so what we did is we interviewed a lot of different offices to figure out where we could fit in, because I'm not traditional, you know, I don't like,
Yeah, there's not a lot of brokers that understand the
I'm a
aspects
free
of real estate you're
ranger.
working
Yeah, I free range. So, you know, I'm to try to control what we do. Now we do everything legally.
Yeah,
Don't-
yeah.
But
Not
we're
stepping
just,
outside the box, but within the
no,
box,
but
there's a lot of latitude.
I'm an out of the box thinker. And
Yeah.
sometimes traditional offices don't like that.
Right.
So,
No, I can totally see where a lot of brokerages would not want you
yeah.
in
And
their
the sales
office.
manager was awesome. I mean, she was just absolutely incredible. And she was also an out of box thinker.
Mhm.
And so we just meshed, and she supported our business, and that's where our group grew, and we went into more REO, and we developed all kinds of legal documents and did all kinds of different things in those days. And actually, I got to tell you this story. There was a document that we created for our self-preservation in real estate, and to control our potential lawsuits. So what we did is, whenever we put an REO on the market, we would go through and do a real quick inspection.
Yeah.
And we came up with a form to kind of give what we saw and what we thought the condition was like and everything. And then we made the buyers sign those.
Right. So they couldn't come in and go, hey, there's no plumbing in this property. We're not
Exactly.
suing you for $5,000, whatever.
Exactly, because we saw some of that coming.
Mm.
And we're in California, remember?
Yeah, now you're talking about early 90s, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the early 90s. So Kathy came up with this form and we ran it through the attorneys for the company and designed this whole thing. And it was quite interesting because I was doing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac,
Mm.
mostly Freddie Mac. And the very first gal that I talked to, Linda, that I was telling you about in the
Yep.
80s,
Yep.
she left the company because it folded and she went, come to find out, she ended up in Southern California and was running a division for Freddie Mac.
Okay.
And so she calls me one day and says, Mike, guess where I'm at? I go, well, I don't know. I said, I think you're in Southern California somewhere. She says, yeah, guess what I'm doing? And I said, tell me. She says, I work with Fannie or Freddie Mac, and I want to put together systems that we did in the 80s and bring it to this department. And I thought, okay, fine. So we created an environment where um, uh, we were designated agents, designated contractors. So we
Okay,
used the
so what's
same,
how is that different from what it was before?
well, because it was just a free range. You just kind of, well, we did the designated thing in the 80s too, but
Yeah.
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in those days, it was just crazy. There was no rhyme or reason.
So by designated, do you mean that,
Assigned agent, kind of like what we have going on right now.
well,
You
no,
are,
no, what I mean is like a bank, you pick any bank that they have an REO department and then they have, are you saying that they would have designated agents? That means Bill, Bob, and George are their designated agents, and that those are the only ones you have to get signed on, so to speak, to the bank
yes,
to be one
yes.
of their designated agents, or does it have another meaning?
No, that's pretty much it. You
Okay,
are assigned and you are part of their system. So anything that
okay.
goes REO, you get that
But what
inventory.
you're saying is that Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae didn't have that kind of system. It was kind of
Mhm.
like, well, we'll pick George, and then we'll pick Mary, and then we'll pick Sue,
Right,
and they wouldn't necessarily use them again. They would just use them for that one property and then be
right,
done.
right.
Okay.
So then what they did is they created the designated and including contractors. So
Okay.
we had to do the repairs, rekey, do the whole thing. Well, the agent in the field is the one that then would hire the contractors, pay the bills and everything, and then submit for reimbursement. So
Yeah.
then we created, hey, I only got this
Now,
one.
now,
What's
Mike,
left?
that's important, I think, because I don't
Yeah,
think people realize if you've got 35 REOs, and I don't know if all banks do it now. I know that yours don't. That is, those banks hire the contract. Your bank hires the contractor now and pays the bills. But I know that when I started taking classes on REOs, it was you as the REO agent have to foot the bill for the contractors to clean up whatever repairs are done, and you have to manage the contractor going out and getting everything done, rekeying, cleaning up the property. You have to make sure that all that stuff is done, and you're out of pocket for those numbers. And if you don't submit a reimbursement to the bank, then sorry,
on time.
you're done.
Yeah,
Oh, on
on
time,
time.
on time. Right.
Yeah.
So you have 35. You're not just saying, okay, I have to list and sell 35 properties. It's I have to manage the contractors for 35 properties, the finances for 35 properties, be out of pocket for all the costs for 35 properties, and manage the escrow. So you essentially have 2+ jobs there, like all the
And pay all the
cleanup.
utilities. And then
Right.
you turn
Okay. And pay all
on
the
utilities,
utilities.
turn off utilities. And if you didn't turn them off in time, the bank would say, well, we're not paying you because we're not paying you for the 5 days that we didn't own the property.
Right. Right. Right.
So you gotta be right on the money. So when you close escrow, you gotta get those utilities turned off
I,
like right
I
away.
I can't imagine what was going on in Kathy's brain.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. 16 hours, 17-hour days. That was in the 80s. I'm sorry, in the '08.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
even
Yeah,
even
I
in the
know. Well,
'90s,
so like talk a little bit about what your day was like in '08, because you work like 100 miles around Sacramento.
yes,
So,
yeah.
so like a
It,
2 hour
it
trip
got
from
it
here.
it got so crazy that I had to have a go bag in my car all the time.
And what was the go bag? Like what was in the go
You
bag?
kept your toothbrush, your razor, the change of clothes, um, kind of like when you travel, you're going to
Okay.
be gone for a day or two. So you have a day or two worth of clothes. And so it would be nothing for me to run up to Yuba City or Marysville, because I got a phone call. We just got two more properties and they happen to be up in that area. And then I'd be up there and then I'd get a phone call from the office and say, okay, we just got three more properties and guess where they are? I said, where? They're in Stockton.
Yeah, those
I'd be
are
up
opposite directions, right?
total opposite
Anybody who doesn't
direction.
know Sacramento geography, yeah,
No,
Stockton's south and
it
the
would
other
take
ones are
you
north.
2 hours to get there.
Yeah.
And so, but we had to be fast. We had to get there, check the occupancy, knock on the door. When do you plan on moving? If it was vacant, we had to get it rekeyed right away. That was my job. I was first on scene.
So have you ever had anyone pull a gun on you?
Oh, of course.
How many times? Was this like a
Oh,
regular
it's just
occurrence?
once, but I think the best story was I was in Del Paso Heights and I had to go check out a property and I was going down one of the real rough streets. I can't remember if it was North or South Street or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was going down there and it was like 1 o'clock, noon, something like that. And it was summer, hot, and there was a guy standing down there on the street in a big trench coat. I thought that was kind of weird. He was on my right-hand side, and the house I was looking at was on the left-hand side. So he was almost right across the street from it. So I'm looking at the house, and then I looked back at him, and he opened up his trench coat and had an Uzi hanging down off his side.
That's
So
crazy.
I'm in a nice car with a tie on because I wore a tie in those days. And so he didn't know who I was, but he was letting me know who he was. Don't break into my territory.
Yeah.
Obviously, I didn't stop to check out the house. I came back later the next day, early in the morning, because they were all still asleep. So then I can get into the house and check it out and make my. But that was the time. Now I've had baseball bats. When you knock on the door, um, you know, those kind of weapons, maybe a knife or something, but I've never been assaulted or anything. I've always not had a problem. And then plus, Kathy kept my insurance up high, so.
So what you're saying is for a long time you were worth more dead than alive, right?
Yes. Yes. So,
I'm still probably worth more dead than alive.
yeah. I mean, I have stories that will just go on and on and on and on and on and on. And they're the
Well,
fun,
yeah.
crazy.
Okay, so I've seen, we've worked together with REOs for I don't know what, 5 years now, something like that. I've helped you out with them and taking pictures and stuff like that. And I it's amazing that the one that ends up being an REO is inevitably the one that is the last street on the last house on a street that you actually want to go up to the door. Like if there's that house, that's inevitably the one that's the REO.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah,
you and
so
I have had some fun with some things. We've had squatters, we had evictions, we've had all kinds of fun stuff.
oh,
Um,
I love that squatter that happened what last year
yeah,
where the police kicked her out one day, police kicked her out the next day. Next day she had
court order.
a court order, yeah, from a judge, signed from a judge saying we can live here. Like, what is going on?
How did this happen? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just that's
welcome to California.
California. Yeah, it's just crazy, 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 crazy.
Yeah. So okay, how many? Like, I know you've been to thousands of these houses, but like, I'm sure that I would expect that the number of people who threatened assault or inadvertently threatened assault was probably very few. I
Yeah,
found most people are
yeah,
just good people. They're trying to work with you.
yes, that's right. So if you're super nice with them, but
Yeah,
there
you're
are a
not going
lot
to
of
be a
REO
butthead.
agents that were jerks too, and they were not fun to work with.
Yeah.
So there were other REO agents that, I mean, they strong arm and I just didn't operate that way. You know, they're in a bad place. Either their fault or not their fault, it doesn't matter, but you know, there got to be some compassion. So I always led with that, and I've had more better results with that and treating them correctly, you know, as
Well,
people.
everyone wants to be treated with respect. I mean, even
Hmm.
I do.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's like, hey, just go in assuming that these are good people, that they're, they're just having
Hmm.
a hard time and
Yeah.
whatever.
So I would tell those people, I said, you know, I have a real tough job. I'm here to get the house vacant. So the inevitable is going to happen. The question is is it going to get done? Are we going to do it amicably and I'll help you out any way I can? You're in a bad situation. This is not good. So we either have a choice. We either make it worse or we just take a bad situation and say it's a bad situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause
And
there's
once,
nobody who's losing their house. That's,
yeah,
life is
it's
good.
going to happen. Yeah. So let's make it work that makes sense. If you need a little bit of time and you want to commit to something on a timetable and a date, we're open to that. We'll work with you on that, but don't not perform.
Okay. So weird question. What's like the weirdest house that you've ever been in?
House?
Yeah. House.
Hmm. You mean like floor plan or condition
I
or?
don't know, just like the one that stands out. So like I remember I had a client, he was an investor, he had some cash, he wanted to buy a house, under $100,000. We went into one house where I remember I walked in, it's the most functionally obsolescent house I've ever been in, ever. And I've been in thousands and thousands of houses. And opened the door and it opens right into the kitchen, which is already like, you just like, what is this? It's a shock to your system to open the door and you're like staring in the kitchen. And then you walk to the left and turn the corner. And this is one of those, 3-party houses. That is, somebody built it and then somebody added to it. Somebody else added to it. It's possible somebody else added to that. And none of them did a great job. But so you'd walk left and then you turn right, and then there was the living room. The other side of the living room was the first bedroom, and then you go through that bedroom to the right, and there was a bathroom, and then there was another bedroom past the bathroom. So you wanted to get to the second bedroom, you had to go through the kitchen from the front door, the kitchen, the family room, the first bedroom, the bathroom, and then into the second bedroom. And then there was another bedroom past that. I'm like, this is just a wackadoodle house.
Yeah.
I
Well,
recommended he not get it, and it wasn't in great condition.
but here's the thing. Do you remember the house we had on E Street?
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
walked
That one was
right
like a
into the
circle.
kitchen. You were
Well,
kind
but
of,
right, that wasn't the front door. That was just the most accessible door.
yeah, you're kind of describing it in a way.
Yeah,
But
but it's like if you open the door and you're looking at the sink,
yeah,
it's like a shock to your senses. You're like, what
yeah,
happened here?
yeah. So I've had houses, you know, high-end homes. I remember I had one in Selby Ranch,
Okay,
and it was in the very front cul-de-sac, just as you drive into Selby Ranch. You go through the gate and it's right there to the left, straight back. That was REO and I sold that. That was in the 80s. That one was real interesting because the ex-owners took every cabinet door out of the whole house, every single one. And they had pantries and stuff, and they had lots of cabinets. And then that house also had a secret door, kind of like to a secret room. So that was
really?
pretty cool. Yeah.
No, okay. So was it just a weird seller? Like they were just different?
They were just pissed and
Oh, they were pissed. Yeah,
it was REO and they took all the doors, all the cabinet doors. There was not
yeah.
one single cabinet door, and there was like 100 of them because it was a big house.
So they really spent some time.
Oh, they spent some time taking it, hinges and all.
So
And
okay,
so
so
we
the
finally
the
sold it.
secret,
But
was it a secret room or was it just like
yeah,
an
it was like
alcove? What was it?
a bookcase, if my memory serves me right. And it
Okay.
would open up and then you had a room behind it. I'm trying to remember if it was in a bedroom. upstairs or what, but it was pretty cool. I brought my kids to it and let them look around, and I said, now this house has a secret room. So they went looking for it and I had to
Yeah.
show them,
That's really cool.
when the kids are,
One of the worst damaged ones was in '08. It was probably '09 or 2010. Somebody must have been really pissed. I think what they did is they took the hose in and like hosed down the house.
yeah,
Because when I got there, and this is when it was on the market, it was only like $5,000 off regular price. So let's say 110,000. This is in West Sac. Let's say 110,000 was regular REO sale price. This was like 105,000. I walked in, there was mold 4 feet up all the walls. And it wasn't just your usual garden variety black mold or gray mold or brown mold or whatever. It was pink, blue, yellow, green. It
Mhm.
was amazing. It was a horticultural's dream or nightmare. And so I went in and I walked through the whole house, and then I did something really stupid, which is I walked out and then I realized I hadn't taken any pictures. I walked back in the house, and mold house, how they take it up 4 feet. Now I know why. It's because that's how high the mold grows. So I went back in, I went back through and took pictures of everything. And I felt sick for like 3 days.
yeah, yeah.
That was a really stupid thing to do.
Talking about the mold and stuff, I had a house in North Highlands, and I sold it to an investor. It was the REO,
Yeah.
and it had a basement.
Yeah.
So I opened up the basement door and I looked down and I go, oh my goodness, it was flooded. So there was 3 feet of water down in the basement,
3 vertical feet is what you're saying.
3 vertical feet of
That's a lot.
water. Yeah,
Didn't
it
it
was
drain
deep.
out through the cracks?
No, it was full.
Uh,
And so imagine the mold that was built up underneath and
oh yeah, that would
everything
be
underneath the house and
genius.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I called the bank and I said, oh, we got a problem. I said, the comps are not going to support anything like this. We're going to have to discount it. So the asset manager said, what do we got to do? And I said, this is what we got to do. And he says, find somebody to buy it now. So I called one of my better investors that just was buying all kinds of things. So we made
Yeah.
him a deal and he bought it, closed escrow, threw a sump pump down in there and pumped all the water out, figured out what caused the water to get in there, fixed it all, did all kinds of things, and he made like $60,000-$70,000 on a flip on that thing,
Nice.
profit. And he did that in like 4 months.
Uh,
So because he got it at such a big discount.
yeah. But this was what, back in the '90s?
No, this was in the 80s. I'm sorry, in the '08 stuff.
808. Yeah. There were some people that were really pissed off at the banks at that time, and y- you know, they did some damage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you hear the stories of pouring dried cement down the toilets and pouring cement down the drains, and
Yeah.
that is actual factual. I hadn't experienced it, and I've done hundreds. In fact, I think in '08, that wasn't my peak, but we sold and closed about 240 to 250 houses a year for those 4 years. '08,
Yeah, that's an
'09,
insane
and
number, my friend.
yeah.
Especially when you're doing all the clean out, all the maintaining of the property, and the selling.
Right, and our bank, this one client, wanted to rehab everything, to make it really nice. So we had about a $25,000 budget on each one of the houses.
Right.
So we were carpeting, painting, fixing, pest work, all that kind of stuff. And then for the stuff that was like in Del Paso Heights, North Highlands, or whatever, they also had a philosophy, which I absolutely loved. He called me one day and said, Mike, we're not going to fix everything, but the ones that we aren't going to fix, I want the best looking piece of junk out there. So he
Yeah,
said,
and we've talked about that. I think that's a brilliant philosophy. I
yeah,
want to be the best of the worst.
best of the
So
worst.
to speak.
So if we're going to board it up, we're going to board it up and paint the boards so it doesn't stand out. He
Right.
said, I want all the weeds and the grass cut, and if it's all dirt, then I want the dirt edged. I don't want stuff on the sidewalk, the driveways. He says, I want it pressure washed. I don't want cobwebs. He said, that's what we're doing. And because all the other banks, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, B of A, Chase, Wells Fargo, all those were not doing anything like that. They would just leave them. They just board them up, and it was an ugly looking board up. But when you drive down the street and you see our house, the one that I did, it was really nice. And his philosophy was, he said, Mike, I want to know what it's going to take to be the next sale.
Yeah, yeah. That is
Period.
to be the better. Uh, well, every sale, it's a beauty contest. It's a show pony. Who's the show pony? Who's the one that, who's the person that's going to be picked?
Right. So we
Who's
want them
that beauty
cracked
contest
out,
winner?
cobwebs knocked down. He
Yeah,
says, we don't have to paint them or do anything like that. If there's busted windows, we want them boarded up and the plywood painted. And so we did that and we got top dollar. It was amazing how quickly we were able to sell those houses. And we were basically the first sale on the street.
yeah, yeah. Because you want your dollar to go the farthest as an investor, as a consumer,
Yeah.
and so you buy whatever you think is the best of the various options that you have.
Right.
And that's when I think, because I was running numbers through all of that, I started actively tracking numbers in 2008. And I think that REOs were about 35% of total inventory that came on the market of the MLS. But REOs and short sales accounted for like 85. There was about a year and a half there.
The
Like
distress sales was,
85%.
yep, about
of everything.
85%. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And the REOs would go faster
Yep.
because they didn't have to wait for the bank's confirmation. Some of the
Right.
banks were really slow.
Right. So fast forwarding through, I went through the 80 or the 2008 and just worked my way through that. And then now here we are.
Yeah. Well, now you're semi-retired.
Semi-retired. Yeah, you never retire out of this. You just have now it's even more fun. So, and then you and I hooked up a few years back and actually,
Yeah, I came over to the office here in 2018, and so
yeah,
we've been kind of working together ever since then. That's been
yeah,
super fun.
yeah, and never look back.
Yeah, we started Gobbi Wright I think officially in 2020.
Yeah, yeah, and we've
Yeah,
never looked back. So it's working out quite well.
yeah,
And all the stuff that you and I have been doing here lately, we've got all kinds of fun things happening. So
yeah, yeah, yes, we do. We won't talk about.
yeah.
All right, I guess to talk a little bit about me, what I'm working on or doing, or whatever.
Well, how did you get started? And you were a one-man band there for a while
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
until I talked to you.
well, I needed to do something else. So really quick, I started in 2000. I worked for a great company, little company. There were only a few of us. I wanted to get the personal. I didn't want to go to a large office where there were 50, 100, 200 agents, whatever, because I knew that the people who knew stuff, they wouldn't be approachable. It's not that they wouldn't have time for me, but I wanted to just be able to ask whatever question I wanted to ask whenever and get a good answer, not an okay answer, not well, this is what everybody does, but really like, hey, here's a good, well thought answer of like how real estate works. And so I went with Camp Real Estate, and it was a husband and wife. He was the broker, she was the office manager, and they only had like 3 agents, and it was great. And so I worked with them for 3 years. After 2 years, I got my broker's license because I knew I wanted to go off on my own and do my own thing. Like you, we both like doing our own stuff. And so I knew I wanted to do that. But after 4 years, I moved out and started Wright Real Estate. I did that for about 15 years. Was it 18 years in total? No, because I think it was 2003 or 2000. It was 15 years in total. I was off on my own. And then what was really interesting and what got me headed in your direction was that as the market was going up and 15, 16, 17, 18, I've been at this for a while. I've been at it for 18 years by the time I made the change. But I was making successively, like each year, I was making a little bit less money but I should have been making more money. That is, the market was going up, we're paid on commission, so my income should have been going up. But I was successively making less money. I'm like, okay, I have to do something different. I'm doing something wrong and I don't know what it is. And I'm all on my own. And, I was going to a lot of classes and doing a lot of stuff, but whatever it was wasn't working. So I came over and, we peripherally worked together. But one of the main reasons that I shifted is because I wanted to be able to pick other people's brains. And that's one of the great things about our office here is that you can go to anybody and you can talk to them and just like ask stupid questions and they'll give you informed answers.
Right. That actually was my experience when I left and closed down my corporation, my real estate company, and went to a traditional.
Yeah.
I was quite surprised. Everybody was extremely friendly. They were open, they shared. And if you wanted to get some real estate business, you could walk up and down the halls. Do you need an open house? You could do things. I mean, it was absolutely amazing in the 90s when that all happened, for me anyways.
Yeah.
And
And so when I started, and I think of it now and it's like, I don't recommend anybody getting a small company that,
yeah, agree.
it's just that there's too much that needs to be trained. And there's some great companies that offer great training. And so now when somebody says, hey, I want to get into real estate, great. Here's some of the companies that I can think of. Go interview with them, see who you like, because you've got training. I don't know if I was just biased that way, but it worked out for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like any of the jobs that I worked for previously, and I probably would say I was not a good employee because I hated punching a clock. I hated punching a clock, and really early in my career. So like after I'd only been in, I was at a Buffini like networking group, and somebody said, a broker, and I've forgotten his name, but you worked with his brother for a while. Anyway, I talked to him. He said, I'm psychologically unemployable. And I went, bing, yes, that's me. I'm psychologically unemployable. Like, I can work for other people. I'm a total team player, but I like working with you, not for you.
Right.
It's the same thing, the same relationship we have. I easy work 12 hours a day for myself, but I have trouble working 8 hours for somebody else.
Exactly.
Anyway, so what was your question again? I've forgotten.
Well, how you transitioned, and because you were a single,
Yeah, it was sole
realtor.
proprietor. I just came over and then we started working more and more together because one of the things that's different about us from most real estate agents is that we've always worked with investors. So my first transaction was a referral from family, and it was a duplex, and it was a duplex on L Street. And so I cut my teeth, and I always, when I came into the business, my family had investment properties. My parents, I think it was 1990 when they bought their first investment properties, and so I'd seen them, and I grew up in a real estate family. I just never thought of real estate. So I got my bachelor's, my master's. I had no direction of where I wanted to go. I wanted to do something for myself, with myself, kind of make my own way, but I had no idea what that would be. And my dad took me out to lunch and he said, why don't you consider real estate? Like,
Mhm.
duh, George, why not? My grandfather was a builder since the 50s, possibly even earlier. He's a spec builder. And he was building out in Fair Oaks, which is what, 25 minutes from downtown now, but nobody wanted to live out in Fair Oaks when he was building out there. It was too far out.
Well, there was no freeway then.
Right. Well, you still have to take J Street.
Right.
But still, it was so far out, back in the day. And it's funny how people's view of distance changes over time. So that was so far out. Now it's like,
Around the
middle of
corner.
Sacramento, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And my uncles were property managers. They were all property owners. Some of them were spec builders. My one uncle was a contractor. Another uncle was a developer. Another one was a property manager. And my grandfather, as I said, was a spec builder. Those two, my uncle and my grandfather worked together. My mom was a real estate agent for a while, but I didn't really know it because she didn't bring it home. And I think part of the time when
So
she
what
was
did
doing it,
so what did you do in the early 2000s or whatever? Did you ever own any rentals or
I did. I bought my first rental in like 2002, and
how'd that go?
it went great. I mean, that's what my wife says. This went great. You know, we made money every month. So, and then but then I sold it in 2004 and then moved it out of state. So that was the first time I bought out of state, bought in Idaho, where my uncle had sold all his properties and bought up in Idaho. So I just went up there because I realized, you know, as soon as I sold, or as soon as I got it on the market, and somebody was interested in it, I'm like, okay, now where do I take this money? And I was looking. This 2004, the market was high, and I was looking at Oak Park, which historically has not been a great area. Didn't want the tenants. You know, the houses there, a lot of them are 1940s and 1950s. So I would have been buying a Class C or D property in a Class C or D neighborhood with a Class C or D tenant, and I just didn't want the hassles, and I didn't have the extra cash or energy to put into it, or skill set. I'm not your fix it guy. You have fix it talents. I don't. So, but anyway, yeah. So, and for me, like I was dying on the vine as you were doing 250 deals a year because I wasn't in REO. And when, you know, there were only a limited number of people who were in REO because,
Correct.
you know, it's not, you don't have 1,000 REO agents. You have 1,000 people buying REO agent stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. So for me, it was a huge blast. It like blew up my brain. I thought, oh yeah, and like all of a sudden, it was like all these puzzle pieces that had not fit together. All of a sudden, like collided, and like I understood the world. So that was June of 2020. I'm sorry, of 2000, and immediately started working on my exam. I want to say it was the 27th of September when I got my license and started in real estate in 2000. And but immediately I went and started, you know, holding open houses. Not that I was the agent, but you know, I could like set it up and hold the door open. I could hand somebody a flyer. I couldn't talk about the real estate, but you know, I could hand somebody a flyer. And so I just started jumping in the business, and that's what I did. So I jumped in wholeheartedly and been doing it ever since.
So was there ever a time, well, for me, I bought my first rental in 1979 and I was afraid to buy it. So I called my best friend and I said, best friend, do you have this much money? So we bought our first house with 5,000 down. So he put 2,500 down. I put 2,500 down. That was our first rental.
Yeah.
And then through the 80s, and when I was working with the investment company, one of the partners convinced me to purchase a bunch of houses. So we bought a bunch of houses together. So we had like 18 houses, and then they walked away, filed bankruptcy, and left me holding the bag. So I had to
Yeah, good
deal
times.
with, oh gosh, it was horrible. Imagine this in the 80s, walking to escrow and writing a check for $5,000 to close a transaction.
Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
huge number now.
oh yeah, $5,000 in the 80s was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so, I've got my horror stories. I've got, my teeth kicked in. But overall, coming out the other end, it's, if you could survive that, it's really, really, really good.
Well,
So,
I found that was really good. On the other hand, I let me throw onto that. So I almost always have had partners. That property that I got in 2002, I got it because I was supposed to own it with other people. I had two other people that we were going to work with. One was the hands-on guy, and there were going to be three of us, and we were all going to work on it and do different things. And I ended up getting taking a subject to deal from somebody, and then I owned it. And we could never get, even though we created the LLCs and stuff like that, we were all doing different things, and so we never could really put together our partnership to to do what we wanted to do, which was invest in real estate. And so I ended up with the property. I actually sold it because I was supposed to buy it with this other guy, I actually sold it to him in like 2004, 2005. I think he sold it in 2000. I sold it in 04. He sold it in like 06. He made some money. I made some money. So it all worked out, but we didn't actually own it at the same time together. And then I started another project in 07 with another guy. And then, we started working together in 2019. And so I've always done investments with other people up until like now in my career. But now I've been in it almost 25 years. Now I feel comfortable, buying a house. It's like, I know that, backwards and forwards, like managing it and all that kind of stuff. I feel really comfortable, but for a long time I didn't. And so I would always lean into other people. And unlike your nasty experience, I've so far, knock on wood, right? I've always had very good partners that when all the chips were down, and they were definitely down from 2008 to, well, a long time, like a decade. But my partner didn't go sideways, and a lot. Yeah, that's something I think is really important. Is you got to work with good people. We had other people and other partners that have gone sideways. Like we tried to put some other stuff together in 2016 and 2017, and the guys just didn't perform. And so we cut it off early. But yeah, that's really important, is having good people to work with.
Right. Right. That's why most of the properties I own right now, I'm sole, and then,
Well, partners allow you to do stuff that you can't do.
correct.
Like even in our relationship, we're working together on a project. You have some capital in the bank that we can allocate for this project. That I can do some of the more work up front. You can allocate more cash, and then it worked out. And so I don't know. I'm a big fan of partnerships, but I think I've been very blessed, and I've learned a lot about people.
Right.
And like
Choose
some
your
people, as
partners
soon as
wisely.
the chips are down, they go running.
Yeah.
Just that's the way it is. And so I think through the scars, you kind of learn who those kinds of people are, and you just kind of stay away from them. And it's not that they're bad people. I don't think they're bad people. Some are bad people, obviously, but a lot of them aren't. They just don't know how to deal with whatever that situation is, and they just can't maintain. So
Oh, there was one thing I just popped into my head. We were talking a little bit ago about the forms that we created
yeah, for Fannie Mae,
in the
Freddie Mac.
90s.
Yeah.
Well, that form is almost verbatim. It's some minor changes, and we now call it the AVID, Agents Visual. So Kathy actually designed that, and that was designed in the 90s for us specifically, because we were doing Freddie Mac at the time, and they saw that document, and so they decided that they wanted to use that also. So they pumped it out to all their designated agents in their market area, and required them to do it because it created a level of protection from them as REO sellers. Then all of a sudden, DRE, Department of Real Estate in California, discovered the form because we all kept using them, and they would audit files and see these forms. So they came up with it, and it's pretty much the same form.
Yeah. So
I should have patented the thing.
Yeah, so anybody who's watching this who doesn't know, yeah, that would have been nice. AVID, Agent Visual Inspection Disclosure, is basically a quick run through of the property by the agent, and noting any deficiencies that they see that are obvious. Like there's 3 feet of water in the basement.
Right.
That's really obvious. So but it does help to protect the agents from something that's glaring, not like something that's behind the walls.
Right. And it's a requirement now. It is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Required.
Has been my whole career.
Yeah, it's been out there for quite a while. Yeah. So
Um,
anyway, I give Kathy the credit for designing that.
Good job, Kathy. Kathy was amazing. She's amazing. Well loved, and she passed what, 2-3 years ago?
2000.
Was it 2000?
October of 2000.
Okay, I guess. Okay, never mind. It has been 4 years now.
Yeah.
So I guess for me getting in, it was just is like, duh, George, why did it take you so long? I did my bachelor's degree. I did my master's degree. I was 30 years old. I'd done a variety of things before that. And I had no clue what I wanted to do in the world. And so let's talk about that for a second. Like, how do you find your passion? Like for me, it was my dad taking me out to lunch and saying, "Hey, do this," and all of a sudden, like all the stars aligned, so to speak. And I've loved it ever since. And so for me, it was never like helping people get into houses. That's part of it, but it's always been about the investor. Like, how does real estate work as an investment? How does it help people? And it's been a passion that's been continuous through my whole career. And people say, "Oh, well, the old meme or whatever it is, that, oh, what would you do if you weren't paid to do anything?" It's like, I've spent thousands and thousands of hours not getting paid to do this stuff.
Mhm.
And so, but after 20 years, I feel like I'm in a place where I can share it and share the things that I've learned to help people make fewer mistakes in investing in real estate and stuff like that. And investing in real estate is something I'm passionate about. I wanted to learn how my family made money, why they made money, and then be able to pass that information on to other people. So that's one of the things that's core for me. And that's one of the things why we're doing this, is we can share experiences so people don't have to make all the mistakes. Because I think there's a lot of mistakes that are simple. They're simple fixes. Like if you just don't do A, B, and C, you're not going to run into D, E, and F.
Right, right.
Anyway, but okay, so passion, like what's your passion about real estate? Like, why'd you stay in it for 45 years?
Well, I've always loved the challenge of real estate, and I'm a kind of person that gets bored. Well, real estate will not allow you to get bored, because if you're bored with what you're working on, you just kind of move over and do this over here. So in my career,
Yeah,
I
if you're
owned a real
bored, you're
estate.
lazy.
Well, yeah. So
Because there's always more to learn to do.
there's always more to learn. So if I and repetition and doing things over and over again, that's fine because I've got it dialed. So I'm the kind of person that needs to keep new things going, learn new things.
Right.
Don't let the old stuff go, but just keep rolling forward. So for me, that's just what I do. So if you get bored with working with property management, well, in my career, I owned a real estate company, owned a property management company. I managed a large real estate office. So I've done so many things. I own rentals. I work with investors, all those kind of things. And it's just a list of a lot of things I've done in my total career. And part of it is because I'm looking for the next adventure. I want to learn.
Are you bored yet?
No, because we are doing stuff that keeps growing and keeps advancing. And
It's still fun, isn't it?
oh gosh, yeah, we're having a
I
ball.
I
I don't
remember
know you, but
like
I'm having a ball.
I remember like 2000. And it was either 2000. I'm sorry, 2020 or 2019. I came in to your office, and I just had been working on something. I'm like, Mike, it's killing me. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm still learning new stuff all the time. You remember what your response was?
What did I
Yeah, it was
say?
something like, I've been doing it 40 years, and I still
Oh
you
yeah,
still learn new stuff all the time.
all the time, new stuff.
Yeah,
And I don't know everything. I know a lot of things, like you know a lot of things.
yeah.
But gosh darn, there's so many things out there that people have done that I can learn from and understand. And so sometimes what happens to me is I want to go and do it.
Yeah.
So that's how one of the reasons why I got into real estate is I picked up a book. And in those days, in the late 70s, early 80s, there were a lot of books out there, buy houses, real estate, no money down, and all
Yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, I picked up a book. It wasn't a very thick one, and basically had formulas and stuff. And to my surprise, I understood it.
Hmm.
I couldn't explain it to my friends, but I fully understood it in my mind. And I
Right, right.
thought, I need to do this. So then I said, I want some tax deductions. I'm paying taxes to the IRS and doing this. So what I did is I picked up the tax book and looked up deductions. So what can you do if you own real estate? You get depreciation, you get all these write-offs and all this stuff. So I looked at it backwards and I said, I want these deductions. In
Right,
order to get these deductions, you got to go do this. And in my case, it was buy real estate.
right,
So that's why I went to my friend before I even got into real estate and said, we're going to buy this rental. Now he worked for Price Waterhouse. So I said, you're going to do the taxes. I'll manage the thing, do the whole 9 yards and do whatever is necessary because I was also now switched over to the investment company and was managing the real estate for them already. So it was no big deal to throw that one into the mix.
right.
So that's the kind of stuff that I look at. So when you and I were talking about different things, we said, hey, what if we tried doing this in our career? What if we tried doing that? So you and I went and did this big tour of central United States, looking at different markets, and then we stumbled across something that was, oh, we've never done this before, so let's try it. And
Right,
here we are.
right, right, right.
Now we've got some history and some background and some experiences. You know, we made a couple of mistakes, but they weren't devastating.
We're still making mistakes. So here's one of the things I learned about myself, and I don't want to say it was this week that I learned it, but it was more put into practice. You know, they had the auditory learners and the visual learners and the kinesthetic learners. Well, somehow I didn't realize I was a kinesthetic learner for most of my life. So I was always listening to stuff, like reading stuff, and I was just thought I was slow. And because my brain wouldn't pick it up quickly. And, you know, my wife is super smart. And, you know, that's kind of a comparison. And what I realized is I just, I just had to do it. Like, I don't know if I'm a fast learner or a slow learner. I just have to do it. Like doing it is what is how I learn. And so in real estate for the last 25 years, I just went out and did it.
Mhm.
And you just I learned a whole bunch of stuff and then it's you know turn around and go, oh, okay, yeah, I did that and I did that and here's how this fails and here's how this works and there's what worked here. And that's why I'm really excited to be doing these podcasts is because we have a huge amount of combined experience, but then we get to talk to a lot of other people who've
Right.
spent their careers and like figuring stuff out. So I'm really excited about doing these interviews with interesting people around the world uh, about all this
Yeah.
stuff because we're going to learn so much.
Right. And I've learned a few things about myself is I will jump into something not even knowing what to do, how to do it. That's how I did some commercial transactions. Never done it before.
Yeah,
So I had an opportunity, so I jumped in, learned real quick, sold a couple office buildings, did a bunch of leases, you know, did those kind of things. And so that's a different style of real estate. So you had to learn some of that stuff.
yeah.
So, you know, I had no idea what I was doing. So you just get in and learn it and do it.
Well, one of the things talking on that is I've had points in my career. I'm not afraid to jump in to do stuff, but I've had points in my career where it's like, okay, I could go down this direction or I could go down this direction. And then I make the decision, which one do I want to learn? Like, where do I want to be later? Which one's going to more
Mhm.
benefit whatever it
Mhm.
is? And and so then you choose an avenue and you choose to like go down the experiential path. And so I have people now that are saying, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And it's like, it's almost like what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, but I don't want that experience learning curve and the monetary learning curve of that path because I
Right,
don't care where that path leads. I'm more
right.
passionate about this. So back to the question of how do you find like how'd you find do you just like luck into it like this is your passion and like what's passionate for you about real estate?
I've basically fallen into everything. When I got out of high school, I had no idea what I was going to do. I had no career, so I went to college, you know, to take the basic stuff, went to American River College there in
That's where I started.
Sacramento. And I did 1 year, and then I started the next semester. But then by that time I was working, and then I was asked to work full time. I worked in 2 gas stations and then the tire store.
Mhm.
So at one point in time, they wanted me to work full time in the tire store. And I thought, oh, okay. So I quit the gas stations and worked full time. So I worked almost 6 days a week at the tire stores, and I started sweeping the floor. Had no idea what I was doing, no clue. I didn't know how to change a tire. I didn't know how to do anything. So I was the low man on the totem pole. So within a year and a half, I was 20. I was managing the store. And the reason how that
Tire
came
store
about,
or the gas
the
station?
tire store. So how that came about is they fired the manager. I had been asked from, because I ran the service truck and I ran, work in the back room, changing tires and stuff. And then I went out in the field and ran a service truck. So I was replacing tires on big 18 wheelers on the side of the freeway and big tractor tires and did all that kind of stuff. And then one day they asked me if I wanted to go into sales. So my uniform changed and I went into the front room and I was taking orders and writing orders and setting things up and stuff. Well, I already knew the back room, and then they fired the manager.
Mhm.
And then they came to me and said, Mike, we don't have a manager to replace yet. While we're looking, do you think you can hold down the fort and run the store? And I thought, well, I have no choice. Well, I have no choice.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it. So it took them about 4 months, 3 months, 4 months to find the proper manager. So I basically ran the whole place. I had 18 employees and I was the youngest of everybody. So, that's a
But
challenge.
Mike, were you the most handsome?
Yeah, 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 I guess.
In your own mind, right? We're
Yeah.
always more
So
handsome.
Yeah, so
In your own
anyways,
mind.
I had to learn that whole thing, and then they finally got a manager, and he and I hit it off when they brought him in. He was just super great guy. So then the store started taking off. We came up with some ideas and did some things. And then he got promoted to general manager, and then I took over the store again.
Right.
And then we took that store, and that's when it became the #1 retail store in the United States for Uniroyal.
Nice.
And because we had some great out of the box thinking and ideas and marketing ideas. And I mean, I got to tell you this story.
Okay.
For the tire business, had an opportunity to get some really good pricing on batteries for car batteries. So we were selling car batteries. So general manager and I were thinking one day, and he said, what can we do for marketing? And I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. It's a little crazy, but I said, what if we went to the junkyard and we had some old junk cars brought over to all the different stores and we flipped them upside down? And then we took a big sign, either make it into a battery with plywood or whatever, and put a big sign on it. Does your battery turn your car over?
Your battery.
Does your battery turn your car over? So we had a car upside down
Right.
in front of
Now,
the,
were these like new or were they like
no, junk. These were
junkers? Or
junkers.
they just
So
like,
we went to the junkyard.
yeah, but they were like, I mean, they looked like a car, so it wasn't like they were
Oh, it was an
crashed.
actual car.
Okay.
It was an actual car.
Yeah, but
So,
they looked like a car. I mean, there wasn't the front end all crashed in or anything like
oh, no,
that.
no, no. No,
Okay.
we got one that was pretty decent condition, and
Yeah.
we turned it upside down.
Right.
And then on top of that, that's where we put our sign.
Right.
The-
Right. 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 Okay.
So the county and the city obviously didn't like that. So it was sign ordinances and stuff. So I already told them, I said, we're gonna have a problem with this.
Right.
And they said, okay, so the manager and I said, general manager said, let's go ahead and do it anyways. Because we're not gonna get fined, they're just gonna give you a notice. You have to
Yeah.
clear this up by the time we got caught and notified, it'd already been a week, right?
Right,
Then they
right,
gave us 2 weeks to remove it.
right. So you had 3 weeks.
So we had 3 weeks of free marketing and advertising, and guess what? The local news people came out and photographed and says, "This is not an accident. Cars are not," and they did this whole express. So we got all this free advertising. So people would drive by just to see the car turned over.
Right, right, right. That's cool.
So those are the kind of crazy out of the box
Yeah,
things.
yeah. No, you told me years ago that you've always been, and maybe it's because you're easily bored, that you always go like search out somebody to like do new stuff. It's like, hey, I want to learn your job. And
Mhm.
that's how you really got to the manager position, is
Right,
because you already had gone to the one guy and done sales, and you'd moved up to sales, and you knew like everybody's job already
right.
because you'd done back floor, gone out and changed tires. But you told me before that you would actually, you'd be done with whatever it was, you'd have a little bit of time, so you go, hey, teach me how to do this. Is that
Yes,
what you did? Or
yes,
like, tell me more
yes.
about that. Because I
Well,
think that's a great life skill. I think a lot of people are like, well, this is my job. That's all they pay me for. Therefore, but Napoleon Hill, one of his core tenets is do more than you're paid for.
right. So what I did is I started sweeping the floors, dusting, cleaning up the shop and everything, and then they would pull the cars into the back, drop all the tires and wheels off, and then there would be one guy go around and pop all the valve stems off,
Right.
right? So the place was clean. I fixed everything, did whatever I was supposed to do, and then I was bored. So then I saw them doing this. So I walked over to where the tire changers were. I grabbed the valve stem remover. They popped the tires off, and I walked around and popped all the valve stems off.
Mhm.
Real simple, real easy. It's just a little tool, breaks it off and go on. So and then I was just doing that. Next thing I know, I asked the tire changes, show me how to change the tire and pull the tire off the rim. So they showed me how to use the equipment. So a few days later, I'm now working and doing some tire changing, and the manager up front didn't know I was doing all this. Then all of a sudden he walks back there and then I'm actually working and doing things. And then it progressed to working on big trucks.
Right.
So I figured that all out, and we created systems, and we created a system to be able to push the cars out faster by you do this, you do this, you do this. So we kind of messed around with that concept,
Yeah.
the Gerald Ford concept of going down the conveyor belts and stuff. So we
Right.
came
Right.
up
Right.
with that, and then we had big, huge trucks, 18-wheelers, and the big truck tires and tractor tires. So then I wanted to learn some of that. So then they had a specialist guy that worked on those, and he would come into the store and do all those. Well, I wanted to learn that, so I took some time and went over and worked with him for a while and learned the truck tires. So then we didn't have to call him to come into the store to do the heavy equipment.
Was he really unhappy? He just put himself out of business, or
Well,
or
no,
not out of
because
business, but he lost a client.
no, what happened is they had 5 stores. So he
Right.
was also running the service truck too. So we couldn't get the work done until he came into the store to get it done. Well, he was
Ah,
out
okay.
doing other jobs and other things. So what
Right. Right.
happened is
So he was still plenty busy. He just helped
oh
you
gosh, he was way
something that
busy.
he
Oh
didn't
yeah.
probably didn't want to do anyway.
No, he would come in and he would complain like crazy. I got this other job I got to get done,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
screaming at me, but I got to come in and do yours. Well, I learned how to do that, which then eliminated that issue and solved a problem
Right.
for the
Right. Right.
company. And then before I knew it, the store wanted to have a service truck being centered out of that location.
Right.
So then all of a sudden, now I was running the service truck and going out in the field and working out in the field and went through all that. And then I had to learn how to do some of these tire changing things. And there's techniques and special tools and things you got to do to deal with that. So that was what I did. And then the next thing was I was kind of pushed into going, well, not pushed, I was asked to go into sales, and then one thing led to another by default. They fired the guy, and hey, Mike, you're the only one left. Can you hold down the fort? And I
Right.
did. I did such a good job that I
Yeah,
stayed there.
yeah, you were the best guy for the job, even though you were the youngest.
Right,
Of the 18 employees or the
right.
18,
Because they
19.
had no sales tech, all the rest of them were really the service guys.
Right. One guy got
Changing
hired
our-
for sales and one guy's for service, but you could do both. And so you were a better pick for, hey, you can keep all this together.
Right. And then when I took over the store and managed it, you couldn't tell me, or the guys in the back couldn't tell me, I don't know how to do this or I can't do it. Because I would go back there and physically do it, even though I'm in my sales uniform, white shirt and all that stuff. I would go back there and actually physically do certain things
Yeah.
to let them know that I know they can do it.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
This
not
can't be
below
done.
me.
Well, yeah, it
Yeah.
can.
It's not below me to not do something. So I will do everything that you do and have.
Hey, you know that's
That's how I
something
have
that
to learn.
that's something I'm kind of passionate about. I think, especially as a business owner, you have to be willing to do whatever job. I was crawling a house the other day, a couple months ago, but it's like, hey, something needs to be found underneath the house, and the client can't find it. They crawled it, and I'm like, well, I'll go look for it too. So I crawled it too. And I hate crawling houses. That's not on
You
my
find
list
it?
of fun things to do in a particular day.
Did you
But
find it?
no, we
But you
didn't.
crawled it.
But I crawled it. But then I knew that I could go to somebody else and say, they crawled it, I crawled it, we can't find it. So maybe it's not there. Rather than they crawled it, didn't see it, don't know.
Right, right.
Maybe your guy can crawl it. I mean, the buyer doesn't want to do that, but at least so it's kind of like, okay, I love Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs,
Yeah, he's a good guy.
just because it's like, hey, life is about just getting stuff done. It's my daughter said something. In fact, it was brilliant. She said this during church the other day, and it was brilliant. Said, "We're not meant to know; we're meant to grow." And I loved it. I wrote it down. I thought that's so brilliant because a lot of people and this is the natural part of humans. We want to know stuff. Like we want to be the guy in the know. Yeah, I'm the guy that knows. But really, it's like life is about growing, and I think that's why a lot. Okay, I'm going to go way out of my expertise and go. I think that's why a lot of people have mental issues is because
Mhm.
they're trying to coalesce all the things that they know. They want everything they know to be everything that is, and they're trying to not go out and experience new things. They're trying to make what they already have be enough. And I think we're just built as humans to grow. And
Mhm.
I mentioned that here because we're both growers. We're both like, we don't know stuff. Like we just go figure it out. Like I've done tons and tons of stuff just like for no reason because other than I felt like knowing it.
Mhm.
Want to know it. And so I'd spend a lot of hours away from family and, you know, learning stuff that sometimes is not useful for 10 or 20 years.
Right.
But then eventually it is, when you get to that point where that particular thing is needed and nobody else knows it because they haven't spent the time and the energy. That's what
Right.
makes you an expert and somebody else not an expert, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not, oh, I've worked at my job for so many years. I'm not an
Mhm.
expert. It's like, no. Well,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing that they say. Somebody's worked at their job for, they have 20 years of experience, and then other people have 1 year of experience that they've repeated 19 other times.
Mhm.
It's like for humans, don't let that be you. You're
Right.
going to spend 20 years one way or the other, or you're going to die. So, make them useful and keep learning stuff.
Right. Right.
And that's one of the things I love about you, Mike, is you're willing to jump in and so like these are some of the things I love about you, and they're all things we've talked about today, which is you're not in the hard sell, which is, hey, I don't have to force you to do it. It's like, hey, we got a bad situation, let's go figure it out. Let's make it the best of the bad situation that it can be, and that kind of humanity, and like, yeah, let's work together. This doesn't have to be hard.
Mhm.
And that you jump into stuff and like I can bring you an idea and you're like, yeah, let's go with it. And so like sometimes I jump like yesterday when I bought that stuff, I'm like, hey Mike, just want to let you know I just bought this. But I know that you're not going to be against it because you're not like, oh well, I got to. It's more important to pinch the pennies and make sure all the accounting lines are done. We need those people too, but
Yeah,
then to jump in and like figure it out. And I think a lot of real estate investors, like a lot of people that aggregate for real estate, are kind of wired that way. You know, they're wired to like go figure stuff out, like jump in and anyway, I don't know how that's helpful or useful, but maybe it is.
yeah.
So,
Well,
because
I'm wondering if we've talked long enough. I think we've
I
got
think we
at
need to
least,
close it out for today.
yeah, yeah, I think it was really good. So, um,
Is there any final question you want to ask me? Anything
um,
that comes to mind?
well, here's one thing. Between you and I, we each have our strengths,
Yeah,
and your strength is analysis. You like analyzing things, figuring things out in that level. I'm okay with it, but it's not my forte.
yeah,
So with what you do and how you analyze and how you look at things and all the research that you do and the markets that are constantly being inspected and checked out. I
yeah. They're
mean, you've
constantly
got
changing.
800 markets across the United States that you're working with and analyzing and coming up with scenarios and patterns and looking for trends and all that kind of stuff, which then is giving us the opportunity to pick and choose markets and ideas. So that is your strength. You're really, 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 really good at that. And I think my trait is I just go for it. And I have a lot of mechanical, I can fix a lot of things literally. I can replace a toilet, I can build an engine.
Yeah,
Um,
you're more mechanically adept. But see that rolls into a lot of the real estate stuff as well. Like we were
correct.
talking the other
I
day.
think mechanically, how do you build things? How do you work things? How does
Yeah,
things mold together?
yeah, and
That's
you're really good at that. And like we were talking about the other day that when we invest together, that I've held you back from some things that could have been damaging. You've held me back from some things that definitely would have been damaging, like some precipices I would have jumped off, and and there wasn't enough safety net. You said, "Hey, you got to have this kind of safety net there," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't believe it right now, but I did a year later."
Mhm.
And so when people have to realize that they don't have all the knowledge. Even the growth is like the things that I grow in are not the same things that you grow in. And so
No,
we're growing together, but we're growing separately and differently. But then, being good partners is like I modify and augment the things that you bring to the table, and you modify and augment the things that I bring to the table, which makes it successful.
right. And then
Yeah,
we're learning a lot of things together that
yeah,
are new, that is really important because we both agree and concur with stuff. And I thought, wow, that's amazing that you thought of the same thing I thought of,
yeah. That's cool when that happens, huh?
and I go, oh wow, yeah, you're right. We need to either expand on this or not expand on something.
Now, two things I want to throw out for whoever's listening or whoever ever listens, if it ever gets
If they
listened.
made it this far.
Yeah, if they made it this far. One is that um, when we make a decision, we have to both agree on it. If either of us doesn't agree on it, then, and this is something an old partner said to me, and I concur. If Mike and we both are not in agreement, then we don't do it because we don't want ever something to fail and it to be a he said, she said, which is, oh, I told you this was going to fail. Well, why did we do it? And the second thing is um, we're flexible with failure, and that is we know that some things are going to fail, but we know
Mhm.
that not everything is going to fail.
Right.
But some things are going to work really well, and some things are not going to work really well. A lot of things are not going to work really well.
It's
Some
called
things are
taking
going to really
chances.
win, and
It's
some things are
called
going to
taking
fail.
chances.
Yeah, and it's taking calculated chances and learning as much as you can, but
Yeah.
realizing that losing money is part of the process. It's not, it's not keeping all the money. Because a lot of things can just be, it's also time and energy and
The
knowledge.
Babe Ruth technique. He
Yeah.
struck out more than he made home runs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways.
But when he did, he killed it. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
let's
he
close
did.
up.
Okay, well, it's been fun.
Thanks, Mike. This has been fun. Let me, we'll sign off for today, and this will be kind of our intro podcast YouTube.
And we'll have some interesting people that we're going to be talking to in the future. So
We're
stay
really excited
tuned.
about that. We're not going to mention any now, but
No, stay tuned.
we have some fun people on the horizon. So take care.